This is Anna Borzello, a good friend and a Thames mudlark.
And this is the amazing Nicola White, also known as Tideline Art, a long-standing mudlark and also my friend, who I made through mudlarking because mudlarking is brilliant at building communities.
It certainly is. And how would you describe mudlarking actually, Anna? How would you describe it?
So mudlarking is when you go along the river and you search for objects that have been lost or dropped or dumped, thrown away any time in London's history really, and the tide goes in and out twice a day and the river bed is exposed and you can search for these objects. That's how I describe mudlarking. So you're basically foraging for history, and what makes mudlarking in London so amazing is that without the Thames, London wouldn't exist really, and everything important that's ever happened in London has basically left its mark on the foreshore for people like you and me to discover. Would you agree with that explanation?
Absolutely, and with the Thames being tidal.
Yes.
Because if we were in Paris and we were on the Seine, we would not be able to find a lot of Parisian history. But we are so fortunate with the Thames being tidal and it going right through the centre of London. And modern day mudlarks, we go down to the river, we're excited about finding stories from the past. And very much unlike the old mudlarks who were very, very poor, the term mudlark goes back to pre-Victorian times, and they were the poorest of the poor. They could be seen with their clothes stiff with mud, and they were selling anything they found really to feed their family, which is something luckily that we don't have to do.
Sometimes I think we're a bit more like those Victorian antique hunters who went along and scavenged and then sold the stuff. You know, there was a kind of a trade in beautiful artefacts. So although we use mudlarks, you're right, there's a, you know, we're more history hunters and coal searchers.
Absolutely, history hunters. And how would you say that you actually got into mudlarking? And what inspires you about it?
What inspires me about it? Well, I got into it because I've grazed in London. My dad used to take me down to the river. He had this house in Wapping that he longed to have on the river. We used to drive by it all the time and he wanted to go there the whole time. So I've always had this sort of attachment to the river. And then I've always considered mudlarking. I knew it existed, and then I was living in Africa for a long time. I came back to have my children, they grew up, and I suddenly thought, this is the time I'm going to seize the day, I'm going to start looking. And I think for me, I'm a journalist by profession, and journalists just love stories. You know, you literally dig around looking for a story. So with mudlarking, you find these objects, you never know what you're going to get, and each object has a story and sort of opens a door, like a little portal into the past, into other worlds. So it's sort of like, it's time travel and travelling even though you're staying on the foreshore in London.
Yeah, I totally and utterly get that. I mean, the Thames is described as liquid history, and I've always said it's like a huge liquid storybook, and all these things you find can just open a portal into the past, and you're holding something in your hand, like a trader's token, for example, and you can find out all about somebody who lived in London in the 17th century, and it's just quite magical. And for me, I just drifted into mudlarking. I didn't even really know it was a thing. So I grew up in Cornwall, so I used to do a lot of beach combing and collected bits of glass, driftwood, pottery, that kind of thing. And when I moved to London back in about 1999, I moved to Greenwich, which is almost like a little beach town. And I found myself down on the foreshore. It was like a replacement beach. And I used to find little bits of pottery, which was brilliant. I used to like making collages with them. And then one day I found my first coin. And this just fascinated me, and it intrigued me. It wasn't even that old. I think it was George V. And it just intrigued me that somebody had dropped this 100 years ago, and here am I holding it. And then I started to find other things, little buttons, military buttons, a little bit of jewellery, and then it just went on from there. And I suppose it almost became a little bit of an obsession.
Oh, yeah. Talking about obsession, I was thinking about this because whenever I want to make any appointment. Last week the doctor and the dentist called me up to make an appointment, and I say, I've just got to look at my diary. I don't have a diary, but I do have an app with a timetable, and I just went through the timetable. And so I'm a little bit busy in the morning, but I can make the afternoon because it was low tide in the morning.
That is so funny. That is hilarious, because I do exactly the same thing, and I do exactly the same thing. I've got the PLA tide timetable on my computer, and I'm like, okay, just let me check a moment. So I'm quickly opening up, looking down the tide times. It has to be a high tide, or it's not going to happen.
And do you ever get anxiety if you have to be away and there's like a really low tide?
Yeah.
I hate it. You think of all the objects which are suddenly going to be uncovered, and you're not going to be there to find them. Although last night we had we were in different spots last night, but I think we both had kind of an amazing mudlark, nighttime lark.
Yeah, and I think that's the amazing thing about mudlarking, isn't it? Because you think, oh, you know, maybe things are going to run out, or there's not going to be anything to find. There's so many people that are inspired by mudlarking now that you think surely everything's going to go, but you go down, you don't know what you're going to find, but you know that even if it's just a button, it can take you on a journey.
So last night, when I was right on the edge of the tide line, a clipper went by, and it had caused a big rush of water, which is a bit like if you throw water on something, it just clears it. You see everything new, and it was glint of gold, and it was a beautiful 17th century trader's token from Kingston upon Thames, which you very kindly researched for me and found out.
I found out that your man on that trader's token, they were issued in the 17th century between about 1642 and 1670, something like that, in response to a lack of small change. So bakers and butchers, candlestick makers, all sorts of people used to have these little coins that people could use in other shops as well. So we sometimes find them, and it's something that everybody wants to find. And yes, so you found this one last night, and even though I just got home from mudlarking myself, and it was midnight, and I thought I must get to bed, I couldn't stop myself from researching your trader's token. So I was on the computer at night looking up the man, John Failder, from Kingston upon Thames, and I found out that he was quite involved in the Quakers in Kingston upon Thames, or Kingston on Thames, sorry. And he actually went to prison for a while as well. His wife was called Anne.
Really?
So anyway, there's quite a bit of information about him. I mean, I think that's him. I hope it is.
I also found a Commonwealth coin, and I love those because those are the coins that were issued when, you know, King Charles I was beheaded, and then you have this republic, you know, these coins that are issued, and they don't have a royal head on them because there was no king or queen, you know, and it's just, I love those coins, this little bit of history, this little slice of coinage without these royal heads on. That was very exciting. And I saw you found a ring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know, it's really weird. I found 3 rings recently, and this one is it's a beautiful, delicate little ring. It's actually golden cubic zirconia. But it always fascinates me that you can go onto somewhere as vast as the Thames foreshore, kneel down and scrape, and then something pops out, and it's incredible. And it's all about that history. I mean, I've got to say, for me, I'd rather find a trader's token than a ring, because you get to research all the stories.
An engraved ring, though.
Yeah.
That would be good.
Oh no, I'd love to find a posy ring. And I think that's the thing as well about mudlarking, is that I've learned so much, and I'm sure you agree. You find something and it's very, very motivating to research it and learn about it. I've learned things that I would never have even dreamed about learning if I hadn't found it in the mud. Like I found a counter-stamped coin a little while ago with Pears soap on it. It turned out that it was made by the marketing manager for Pears soap back in the 19th century, who's actually the pioneer of modern marketing. And I would never have known that if I hadn't have found that.
I found, you know, as you do, we often find false teeth.
Yeah.
And I've got a little false teeth collection, and now I know all about the history of false teeth. I was thinking, how did this happen? How can I know about false teeth of all things? And what I love about a lot of the things that we find, even though you can't research every object to make a personal connection, often people lose common objects. So the sort of things people lose now, like I've just lost my money, my debit card today, and you lose your keys, and all those things end up on the Thames. They're sort of ordinary objects, but they're the sort of everyday stuff of everyday life. So when you find those ordinary things, you're sort of getting a handle on what the world would have looked like and even felt like to people in the past. So I actually found a whole load of Tudor pottery and tiles in one spot.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I made it into my Tudor mood box.
Tudor mood
Yeah, you look at it and you think, this is what it would have felt like. This is what the tile under their feet, this is what the stone would have felt like. And these are the muted colours that would have been around them. It felt like you were recreating the life of an ordinary Tudor person just through these quite ordinary finds.
Yeah, and you love pins, don't you? Why do you love pins? Because there are so many of them to be found.
Funnily enough, Nicola, I have a few pins with me under my seat. And now I'm going to show this to the camera. Here we go. These are my box of pins. They don't look very impressive. I have to say there's about, believe it or not, 15,000 in there.
15,000?
So I don't find them in, you find them in groups, but I literally picked these up one by one over 6 years.
It's quite meditative.
It's meditative but nutty. I think we have to be honest there. And they've got this wonderful kinetic quality actually. They kind of like, I felt like it could be a children's toy if they didn't prick you.
Oh, it's like one of those magnetic towers, isn't it?
But what I didn't,
Can I touch it?
Yeah, I had no idea about pins till I started. And why would pins be on the foreshore? Well, of course, from 1400 right until like the end of the 19th century, people were held together with pins. They started off at high-end items, then they became everyday items, particularly in the 17th century when there were factories being made, production lines, and people had them, holding together their ruffs, keeping together, nipping in their waists. Byron talks about women being prickly to the touch when he holds them, and I think that's because he was embracing them, and the pins were going into his hands. And Samuel Pepys talks about a woman pricking someone in the church with a pin that she gets out and just pricks them because it's got an untoward advance. And this was the fabric of everyday life. Everybody wanted or needed or had pins, and they went from being really expensive. I think I worked out that it was something, I can't remember what it was it? I've forgotten my calculation. It was something like 33 sheep for 100 pins. It was something crazy in the 15th century. And then they went to being just sort of mass-produced, nothing sort of items. But who knew? It's like the history of the world through a pin. And I had no idea till I started mudlarking.
And I particularly love finding something that I can relate back to somebody in particular, especially with regards to even pipe stems, with the makers on.
Yes.
That are strewn all over the foreshore. In certain areas you will find the same name over and over again.
Yeah.
I particularly love finding something that I can link back to a person or a place, a particular person or a place. Even if that's a pipe stem with the maker on. There's a particular pipe maker called Jephthah Stubbs who I found out quite a lot about. And even now, his family, his descendants are still working in the industry of pub snacks and foods, only now, they're sold in vans and not horse-drawn carts, whereas he was selling clay pipes to pubs. My favourite personal find that I've been able to relate back to somebody, I suppose, is in fact a very small, very boring looking find actually. It's a tiny little brass tag with the name of a man on it and an address. He was called Fred Jury and he lived at 72 Woolwich Road. And because there was the name and the address, I was able to find out that he went to Australia. He fought in World War I with the Australian Imperial Force. He lost some fingers. He was hit by a grenade. He married his landlady. And that for me is the real kind of, real essence of mudlarking. You find a little object and then a whole story opens up in front of you. And I ended up going to find where this man, Fred Jury, was buried. And it turned out that he's buried in the cemetery not far from where I live, in a pauper's grave. And it was very, very overgrown. The cemetery keeper helped me to find it. And it just felt so right, rescuing this story from the river and then being able to tell it and share it with people, this man's life, because he had no children of his own. So, he was essentially forgotten and gone, and then I don't know, it just brought him back to life. And I think that is the magic of mudlarking.
one of the things I like about mudlarking as well is this community where you can share information. So I know you post a lot on Twitter and you have a YouTube channel, and I post a lot on Instagram, and you put something up and then all these people sort of pile in and share information. And I mention this because one of the finds that you recently posted that I loved on Twitter was this really strange looking creature, a dog with spikes, nails coming out its back. And I was fascinated as Twitter sort of piled in and revealed this story to you.
I know, that was a really special one actually, and one of my favourite recent finds. I was down on the river and I saw this strange looking carved animal, and it had lots of nails sticking out of its back. And first of all I thought, oh dear, that looks very voodoo-like. We get offerings and all sorts of strange things thrown in the river, don't we? Modern things as well as old things. And so when I first saw it, I took some photos. I thought, there's no way I'm taking that home with me. It just looked a bit evil. Well, I took a photo and I put it on Twitter, and like you're saying, there's so many people out there that know things about everything on all these social media platforms. And I was very quickly contacted by several people who said, well, that looks like a piece of art, essentially. You could call it art from the Democratic Republic of Congo, a Nikisi Kozo power figure. So I had to quickly jump in my car and drive back down to the river before the tide came up to rescue this creature from the river before it floated down to its next stop, because apparently it's actually quite special and very significant.
Was it 19th century?
Yeah, that's right, late 19th century probably. And it would have originated in the DRC, and it could well have been taken from there by people who purchase art, or often missionaries didn't like that kind of art, so they used to get rid of it. But for whatever reason it ended up in London, and who knows how it ended up in the Thames. But when I got it home, I thought, I'm not having you in the house. I left it in the car for 2 days. And then finally I brought him in, and now he's in my studio and he's absolutely great. And I'm learning more about him thanks to several professors at universities who have told me all about this very special Nikisi Kozo power figure. And I'm still learning about him. But yeah, it's a good example of how diverse, let's say, the objects are that we can find in the river.
But you mentioned ritual objects like this one.
Ritual
so
objects,
I always find it really fascinating. Well, we're talking about objects that you find from the past. So you can get, for example, pilgrim badges if you're really lucky, from when England was a Catholic country, from the 14th century, for example. But I really like finding modern religious offerings. I really like the fact that things you find in the river that are contemporary tell you about the everyday. So you'll find where a Hindu community lives, and when there's a festival, you'll find little
like the Ganesh festival.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And you'll find little oil lamp bowls, or sometimes you'll find things to do with death, or coconuts. There's a lot of coconuts on the river.
Yes.
I found a strange bag full of lentils and money. I'm not sure what that was about, but it's really interesting how the river is still, a centre for worship. It's still a ritual focus. I like that, even in the modern day.
Yeah, it's linked in every way to spirituality, isn't it? I mean, the river Thames is holy, like many rivers. And yeah, the religious offerings are so fascinating. You suddenly come across this most resplendent Ganesh sitting in the mud, staring at you. And there's a big debate about whether they should be left or could they be taken, and it's something that many people have differing opinions on. Talking of plastic and plastic bottles, I have, since I started mudlarking, now found almost 140 messages in bottles in the River Thames. So, like you say, it's not only ancient rubbish that is in the river for us to find. The stories continue up till modern day, and it's quite fascinating the different types of messages you find. I mean, messages in bottles have been sent since ancient Greek times, and it's often a way of letting go of an emotion and letting it get carried away down the river. And lots of people send them if they've lost somebody, or they're saying goodbye to somebody, or they want to let go even of a bad habit. There's something about putting something that you've written down in a bottle and then sending it away, and you're almost channeling all that pain into a bottle.
Or if they want a Power Ranger outfit.
Exactly, throwing a wish in the river. I mean, it's all about letting go, isn't it? And then getting something back. And that's one of my favourites, a little boy who wrote a message which said simply, "I wish I was a Dino Thunder Power Ranger, the Red Ranger, love Jack." And it had his surname. And I put this on Twitter, and amazingly, it was like a virtual message in a bottle. It went all out into the virtual ether. And incredibly, we traced Jack. And so I sent him a Power Ranger outfit, and I got a photo back of him in his Power Ranger outfit, and it was just brilliant, magical again.
Do you ever I get asked a lot, I'm sure you do, what you do with your finds, and which I find quite an interesting question, but for me, I get my finds and I put them on shelves.
Yeah.
And I'm a very untidy person, but I'm quite precious about my shelves. And I can always think about my shelves. How shall I arrange them? Should it be by chronology, by type? You know, do I like the mass effect of pipes? And I look at them. They're the set. My whole kitchen, my new kitchen, was designed around my shelves. And what about you? I just wondered because I know you're a shelf person in your studio.
Yeah, do you know what? I've got a certain kind of, I love keeping my things. Somebody the other day wrote to me, they put a comment on my YouTube channel and said, "Have you ever thought about what is going to happen to your finds after you die? What are your children going to do?" And I thought, well, you know, I cherish the things I find. I research them. I love to have them around me. When I was about 12, I always wanted to have a little space that I could keep all my finds. I mean, then it was snail shells and little bird skulls and things like that. And I realised very recently when I was sitting in my studio surrounded by all these beautiful objects that I've found, that I now have that, a laboratory shed that I wanted to have.
Oh, I like that. What a lovely thing.
Yeah. Well, as much as I would love to sit here talking about mudlarking all day, and I really could, believe me, the tide is going down, so we have to go soon, don't we, Anna? But is there anything you want to add?
Well, I want to say that mudlarking, anyone can mudlark, but you just need to have a licence from the Port of London Authority. So if you're interested in that, just search for the Port of London Authority and follow it up. And I also want to say that if you're interested in finding out more about the amazing Nicola White, she has this fascinating YouTube channel where she looks into history and shows you her finds from her outings. And her name is Tideline Art, and that's also her name on Instagram and Twitter. And I would highly recommend it. She has a lot of fans. She's a very popular lady.
Thank you, Anna. That's so kind of you. But equally, Anna has an absolutely brilliant Instagram site, and she is at Foreshore Seashore. And if you want to find out lots of very, very fascinating historical facts, then hers is the Instagram site to head to.
Thank you.